Akansh.
Hello.
Hello.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yes, ma'am. So, good afternoon, Akanksha, ma'am. So, just give me a minute. I'll just check my video.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Welcome all the participants. I welcome you all in this insightful
Wait a
webinar.
second. We will be starting the show. While let's come. I'll start the recording now. Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yes, Akansha, we can start now.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Akansha Vajpayee. I welcome you all in this insightful webinar on space law. The speaker today, Dr. Ajaymeet Singh, has 13 years of professional experience, including 7 years in the field of academia. He has published around 12 books and various papers under his name. He has also imparted knowledge on air and space law, law of sea and rivers, public international law, jurisprudence, and Muslim law, amongst many other areas of law. So without further ado, over to Dr. Ajaymeet, sir. Yes, sir. You may continue now.
Thank you, Akanksha, ma'am, for this wonderful opportunity. And I wish a very good afternoon to all the participants. So, okay. So, I also express my gratitude to LegalStix for giving me this wonderful opportunity to be the instructor for this course on space law, and subsequently I'll be taking a course on aviation law as well. Now, talking about space law, which is the topic for today's webinar. Now, space law and both aviation law, they are the emerging areas of public international law. They're the branches of public international law. And space law comparatively is less developed as compared to aviation law, because you will find aviation law firms in the metro cities and the large cities, but Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata. There are several firms which deal with aviation law, but there's hardly any firm which deals with space law. And the reason is that one of the reasons is that there's not much litigation as yet pertaining to space law, because as of now, although there are some websites which are selling plots on the moon or Mars and other celestial bodies, other planets, but due to lack of technological advancements, it's not possible for human beings to go there. And then there's a floating space nation, although legally speaking, it's just a micronation. It's not a full-fledged country under international law. It's known as Esgardia. So that's like a satellite was launched in 2016 into space by Russian scientist Igor Sherbeli, and he intends to launch hundreds of satellites which will join together to form a floating space habitation, to form a floating space nation. But then again, the legality of such a floating space nation is questionable under international law. So now, in this webinar, I'll give you a brief overview of various topics of space law. Like, I'll start with the meaning, nature, and scope of space law, the difference between aviation law and space law, and subsequently, I'll give you an overview of space tourism, which has like suborbital space tourism, which has recently become a reality as SpaceX has introduced it in USA. Although orbital space tourism, it became a reality more than 23 years ago, 22 years ago, in fact, when the first human being he went to the International Space Station as a tourist. So then we'll talk about the problem of space debris, or also known as space junk, and then the colonization of outer space, space exploration, then use of outer space for espionage or spying, and what is the legality of the spy satellites. Okay, so just give me a minute. I'll just share my screen. I'll just open the PPT. Okay, so I hope the screen is visible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So I start with the meaning of outer space. So what do you understand by outer space? So outer space, it simply means the space which is lying beyond the atmosphere surrounding the Earth. So where the atmosphere ends, the outer space begins. But again, in international law, as of now, there's uh, no proper boundary which has been demarcated by any international treaty or convention as the proper boundary between airspace and outer space. So outer space is also defined as the boundless three-dimensional extent in which the objects and events have relative position and direction. So there are various theories in international law or various viewpoints as to where the airspace ends and the outer space begins. Now, as per one viewpoint, the airspace of a country or the sovereignty of a country over its airspace, it extends only till the height to which it can fly an aircraft. So the fighter aircraft, they are capable of flying at an altitude of like 1 lakh feet. Yes. Okay, so I request the participants to kindly mute their mics. So I'll give them an opportunity to ask questions towards the end of the session. Okay, yes, so I was mentioning that as per one viewpoint, the sovereignty of a country over its airspace, it extends till the height to which it can take its aircraft. Now, the passenger aircrafts, they are not capable of flying at an altitude of more than 40 to 45,000 feet, but the fighter jets, they are capable of flying at altitudes exceeding 1 lakh feet. But again, this theory is not universally acceptable to majority of the countries. And then there's another viewpoint that the airspace, it extends to an altitude of 100 kilometers above the airspace. So a viewpoint was proposed that, okay, let's fix the boundary or the limit of the airspace to an altitude of 100 kilometers. Up to 100 kilometers, the sovereignty of a country would extend over its airspace, and above 100 kilometers would be the outer space. But again, this boundary has also not been accepted by the countries under any international treaty or convention. Okay. So the actual boundary between airspace and outer space, it is still disputed in international law. Yes, any question? So there was some disturbance from the side of one of the participants. I thought maybe somebody wants to ask a question. Okay. All right, so now why this boundary must be demarcated as soon as possible? That one of the reasons is that as per the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, which is the constitution for international space law, the outer space is the province of all mankind. The sovereignty of any country does not extend over outer space. But yes, as per the Chicago Convention of 1944, which is the constitution, like the constitution for aviation law, the sovereignty of a country, it extends over its airspace. Okay, so that's why the boundary, it needs to be demarcated. So outer space is free for all, but it does not mean that you can claim any portion of the outer space as your own. No country can do that. All right. So now coming to the difference between aviation law, which is also known as air law, and space law, air law and space law. So now airspace, except over the high seas and Antarctica, it is under the sovereignty of the subjacent states, whereas outer space is governed by the regime of freedom. As I just mentioned, it is the common heritage or the common province of all mankind. So and the other point I've already clarified, that the boundary between airspace and outer space is still unsettled. Okay, now coming to the uses of outer space. Why the outer space, it needs to be governed by law, and like what are the uses of outer space? So actually, before moving over to the various conventions which deal with the space law, the various international conventions, I'll just give you an overview of the various uses of the outer space. So first is research purposes. So as some of you may be knowing, that various experiments, they are conducted in the outer space, particularly in the International Space Station. Now, can anybody tell me that at what altitude the International Space Station, it orbits around the Earth. So the International Space Station is like a satellite. It's a satellite like various other satellites, but there's a difference that it has been established by various countries. Like some countries have supplied particular portions of it, and so it is a result of a collaboration between the countries which have advanced space technology. So at what altitude it orbits around the Earth? Okay, so the answer is it's around 400 kilometers, plus minus 20 kilometers, but the average is 400 kilometers. And now, can anybody tell me that if an invention is made on board the International Space Station by an astronaut, suppose an astronaut is conducting an experiment in the IS on board the International Space Station, and he invents something, then to which country the invention would belong? Okay, so the answer to this question is that the invention would belong to the country in whose module that that particular element was discovered. Okay, suppose a Japanese scientist working on board the International Space Station, in the American module, he discovers something that would belong to, the invention would belong to America. Okay, so we'll discuss it in detail subsequently later on when the course would begin on 2nd September. So then I'll discuss everything comprehensively. So now weather prediction through satellites. So as you know very well that the weather reports which we receive every day, so they are received through the satellites which are orbiting around the Earth. Then surveillance. So the outer space is also used for surveillance and also for espionage purposes. So some of you might have watched that movie titled Parmanu. So in that movie, it's highlighted that how America used to keep a track on the Indian nuclear program by its satellites. So the technology has advanced so much that they can, like the spy satellites, they can capture high resolution images of such nuclear programs or any program which is being any suspicious program which is being conducted in any country. So, but how far is it legal? Can anybody tell me whether espionage through spy satellites is legal or illegal under international law? So recently, like around 2-3 years ago, China shot down.
Illegal.
Okay, someone said illegal. Okay, so actually it's still a gray area under international law. Yes, most of the people, they are of the opinion that yes, it is illegal because the outer space is reserved for peaceful purposes, and spying or espionage, that is not a peaceful activity, or it has the tendency to disturb the peace or to strain the bilateral relations or mutual relations amongst the countries. Okay, so a few years ago, a Chinese spy satellite, it was shot down by, I think it was by America. So then at that moment, it became an international news that a spy satellite has been shot down. Then the satellites, they are also used for the purpose of broadcasting. So I won't go deeper into it. Then comes the concept of space tourism, which is indeed a very interesting topic in international space law. So now space tourism, it is of 3 types. That is suborbital space tourism, orbital space tourism, and lunar orbital space tourism. Now, in the suborbital space tourism, which SpaceX, that company owned by Elon Musk, it has recently introduced. Now, what they do is that they take some 4 to 6 tourists on board a spacecraft, and they take them around 80 to 100 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, where they experience weightlessness for around 4 to 5 minutes, and then they come back. So this is known as suborbital space tourism. So then the other one is orbital space tourism. Orbital means that you go on board a satellite and you orbit around the Earth. So basically, earlier only the astronauts, they were allowed to go into the space, and but in the year 2001, it was for the first time that orbital space tourism, it became a reality. So when a multimillionaire, he paid a huge amount of money to become the first space tourist. Okay, so towards the end of this session, I'll be hosting a quiz for all of you where I'll reveal the name of that astronaut. Okay, so then the last is lunar orbital space tourism. Now this lunar orbital space tourism has not become a reality till yet, but it is expected that maybe by the year 2030 it would become a reality. So it is a Japanese idea basically. So what the Japanese intend to do is that they will take 10 to 15 tourists on board a spacecraft, and they will take the spacecraft to near the moon, and they will orbit around the moon for they'll take 4 or 5 rounds around the moon, and then they would come back where the tourists, they can see the moon from a relatively from a very near distance, although they won't be able to land on the moon. So this is lunar orbital space tourism. So last is exploration. So obviously space, outer space, it is used for exploration as well. So several satellites, not satellites, but the several spacecrafts, they have been launched into the outer space for the purpose of taking close-up photographs of the planets like Jupiter, Saturn, and Pioneer satellite. It was launched in 1976, and now it has crossed beyond. It has went beyond the solar system as well. So space. Now the outer space, it is used for these various purposes. So if anybody has any question so far, then I'll be glad to answer. Otherwise, there would be a question and answer session towards the end also. Okay, so now continuing further. So yes, space debris. Now this is a problem like as we study about environmental pollution. So similarly, the space has become polluted as well. Ever since the first satellite has been the first satellite was launched into the space. So till now, around 8,000 satellites have been launched, and many of them, in fact, around 40 to 50% of them, they have become defunct, and there's no technology to bring them back to Earth, to bring back the defunct satellites to Earth. So they keep on orbiting around the Earth till the time they enter into the lower Earth atmosphere, and they get burnt by the extreme temperature. Now, one point which is important to mention over here, which is a scientific fact, although it has nothing to do with law, is that as we go into the various layers of the atmosphere, in some layers the temperature decreases, and in some layers the temperature increases. So the temperature, it can go in some of the layers of the atmosphere, it can go as high as 1500 degrees Celsius. Okay, so space debris or space junk, that's a problem in international space law. Then space colonization. So as I gave you the example of Asgardia, so which is a micronation, and it intends to become a floating space nation around the orbit of the Earth. So similarly, Elon Musk's company's SpaceX, it intends to have a human habitation on Mars in the near future. But then, does the international space law allow that? So the answer is no. So nobody can claim any portion of any celestial body as his own. Nobody can declare ownership over any planet or any part of a planet as such. But here I would like to tell you that you can just Google it. There's a website, lunarland.com. I repeat, it's Lunarland, LUNARLAND, lunarland.com, where you can buy a land on the moon. I think now they have increased the prices. Earlier, the price was $20 per acre. Now they've increased to $30 or $35 per acre. So many people, they have purchased land on the moon, but then in reality, those sale deeds which they receive and the maps which they receive, that this is the area of the moon, or this is the portion of the moon on which you have your plot, it has no legal validity. Now the person who's selling land on the moon, he has been doing so since the past 40 years, more than 40 years, since 1980. So he said that he has tried to deliberately find a loophole in the International Space Treaty, that is the Outer Space Treaty 1967. Now the OST, it debars the states. it says that no state or no country can claim ownership over any celestial body. So the loophole which he has tried to find in it is that it does not debar individuals from claiming ownership over the moon or any other planet. But then legally, his argument falls flat to the ground because of the reason that the individuals, they derive their personality from their state in international law. Okay, individuals, they have no separate existence from their state. So no individual. So if a country is not allowed to claim sovereignty or ownership over the moon, Mars, Jupiter, or any part of any planet or any satellite as such, how can an individual do that? Okay. So, but subsequently, right now, the international law jurists, they are not very serious about this issue because the technology is not advanced enough for enabling the human beings to actually settle over there. But subsequently, suppose 100 years down the line, it's possible for human beings to have colonies on Mars or on Moon. Then certainly we would have to revise the Outer Space Treaty, or we would have to mold the Outer Space Treaty in accordance with the technological advancements that may take place in the future. Okay, so now coming to the contents of space law. So what broadly we covered under international space law? So we covered the rules and principles of international space laws, which are mentioned in the 5 international treaties, which I shall be discussing in the next PPT. That is the OST 1967, then the Rescue Agreement, then the Moon Agreement, the Liability Convention, etc. Then the countries, some countries, they've also entered into bilateral agreements for the purpose of sharing space technology. And then there are municipal laws, that is national laws, rules and regulations. So in India, we don't have a space code as such, but a bill was introduced in 2017 for the purpose of enacting a comprehensive space law regulating the use of outer space. So now just give me a minute to move over to the next PPT. So okay, so now I'll briefly touch upon the sources of space law. So the sources of space law, they are more or less similar to the sources of international law, which the law students, they study in this subject, public international law. So they are categorized into primary sources and secondary sources. So as per Article 38, Clause 1 of the Statute of the International Court of Justice, these are the 5 sources of international law, that is international conventions, international customs, general principles of law recognized by civilized nations, judicial decisions of the international courts and tribunals, and lastly, juristic opinion or the teachings of the most highly qualified authors or publicists of the various countries. And there's one more, that is decisions or determinations of the organs of international institutions or international organizations. So now, so these are the international conventions and agreements on space law. So the Outer Space Treaty, it was enacted in the year 1967, and as I told you a few minutes ago, that it is like a constitution of the Constitution of International Space Law. It lays down the foundation of space law, and subsequently the Rescue Agreement, also known as the Agreement on the Rescue of Astronauts, the Return of Astronauts, and the Return of Objects Launched into Outer Space, that was enacted in 1968. Now this agreement, it declares that astronauts, they are the envoys of mankind in outer space, and when the astronauts, they are coming back to Earth, they are entitled to land in any country, even though it may be an enemy country, but still they are entitled to be returned to the country of their nationality or the country of the launch, the country of the spacecraft in which they were launched into the space. Okay, so then next is the Liability Convention, also known as the Convention on International Liability for the Damage Caused by Space Objects. So it fixes the liability in case a satellite or any object launched into the outer space, it causes damage to another country. So the rules pertaining to liability, they are mentioned in this convention. Then there is the Registration Convention, also known as the Convention on the Registration of Objects Launched into Outer Space, under which every satellite which is launch into outer space, it is required to be registered. But sometimes what happens is that when a country is launching a when a country is launching a spy satellite, it does not register it. Okay, in order to keep it a secret, because if it is registered with the United Nations, then obviously the other countries would get to know that such kind of a spy satellite has been launched. Okay. Then last is the agreement governing the activities of states on the moon and other celestial bodies, 1979. So this agreement is just an extension of the Outer Space Treaty, and it specifically talks about the moon and the other celestial bodies, that no country can claim ownership over them. Okay, and they are the common heritage of all mankind, and that the outer space, including these satellites, they are to be used only for peaceful purposes. So the weapons of mass destruction, they cannot be placed on a satellite or on the moon or any other planet or celestial body. Okay, because if weapons of mass destruction or any weapons for that matter, they are placed on board the moon or the other celestial bodies, that would be a violation of the Outer Space Treaty 1967 as well as the Moon Agreement of 1979. Okay, so apart from these conventions and agreements which form the broad framework of international space law, there are certain principles which have been adopted by the UN General Assembly for the use of outer space. So we'll be discussing about them in detail subsequently when I'll be starting with the course on 2nd September. So for now, I'll just give you an overview. So the first one is the Declaration of Legal Principles Governing the Activities of States in the Exploration and Use of the Outer Space, 1947. Then there are the legal principles governing the activities of states in the exploration and use of outer space, 1963. So basically these principles, they are an extension of the international conventions and agreements, and the basic framework of or the basic point which is mentioned in all these agreements and principles is the same, that the outer space, it cannot be used for non-peaceful purposes or for the purpose of stationing weapons or weapons of mass destruction. So then principles governing the use by states of artificial earth satellites for indirect television, direct television broadcasting. So it deals with the broadcasting rights. Then there are principles pertaining to remote sensing, then the use of nuclear power sources in outer space, etc. Okay, so then we'll discuss about the sources of international law or international space law in detail later on. Okay, so now we'll have a brief quiz. Now it's time for a quiz. As I told you that this is going to be an interactive session. So, okay, just give me a minute. I'll close the previous PPTs. Okay, now can anybody tell me that which was the first satellite launched into the space to orbit around the Earth? And in which year? And by which country? Okay, so the answer is Sputnik 1, which was launched by the erstwhile Soviet Union on 4th October 1957. So it simply means a fellow traveler in Russian language. So it was a very small satellite, around 22 inches in diameter, and it weighed just 183 pounds. So it orbited Earth every 98 minutes, and it fell back to Earth on 4th January 1958, 3 months after its launch. Okay, so now this is also an easy question. Who was the first animal to orbit around the Earth in a satellite? You can tell me. Laika the dog, yes, absolutely right. So Laika, she was sent to space on board Sputnik 2. Okay, and she couldn't come back to Earth. She died in space only, as it was not possible to bring her back due to the technological restrictions at that time. Okay, now coming to the next question. So which spacecraft carried a human being to space for the first time? The name, you can tell me the name of the spacecraft or the name of the astronaut. The first astronaut who went to space. Yes, exactly. So, cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin. So actually, the Russians, they prefer to use the word cosmonaut, and the Americans, they prefer to use the word astronaut. So otherwise, they perform the same nature of work. As such, the nature of work is not different. Just the terminology which is used is different. Okay. So it was on board Vostok 1. Vostok 1 was the name of the satellite. So on 12th April 1961, Soviet Air Force pilot Major Yuri Gagarin, he became the first man to orbit around the Earth in this spacecraft named Vostok 1. Okay, now coming to this question. So I told you a few minutes ago that it was in the years 2001 that the first human being went to space as a tourist. So can anybody tell me the name of the first person to visit the International Space Station as a tourist? Sorry, you're not properly audible. Can you speak a little louder? Is it Aniket? Aniket, you're not audible. Yeah. Okay. This is the answer. Dennis Anthony Tito. So he spent 7 days and 22 hours on board the ISS between 28 April to 2001. Okay, so and he had to pay a hefty amount of money for it. He paid 20 million US dollars in the year 2001 to the Russian Space Agency to fund his trip. So at that time, the Russian Space Agency was the only space agency which allowed human beings to go to space as tourists. Now coming to the next question. So Dennis Tito was the first individual to visit the space as a tourist. Who was the first woman? So she also went to the International Space Station. Okay, so the answer is Anushay Ansari. So on 20th September 2006, she became the first woman and the fourth individual overall to visit the International Space Station as a tourist, where she spent 9 days. Okay. So next question. Which was the first spacecraft to land on the moon and in which year? This is a very easy question. Yes, anyone who can answer this? Okay, so it's Apollo 11 and 1969. So yes, so the outer space, it is considered to be infinite. So till now, we have not been able to find the limits of the outer space or the universe, despite the rapid advancements in science and technology. Okay, so now the last question for this webinar. So if someone is from science background, maybe he might be able to answer this, as this is a tough question. So by traveling in space, is it possible to travel in time? Like when I'm asking about traveling in time, it means traveling to the past or to the future. If you go to the, I'll simplify the question. So suppose you are on board a spacecraft which has been launched into outer space. Now, by traveling on board that spacecraft, is it possible for you to travel into the future or into the past? Okay, so the answer is that yes, it is possible to travel into the future, but it's not possible to travel into the past. So as per Einstein's theory of time dilation, so it's possible to travel into the future by traveling into the space in a spacecraft if we can manage to take that spacecraft to at least 87% of the speed of light. So at 87% of the speed of light, for every 1 hour which passes on board the spacecraft, 2 hours will pass on Earth. And as you move closer to the speed of light, so this difference will increase. The difference will keep on increasing. For example, at 90% of the speed of light, for every 1 hour which passes on board the spacecraft, 1 week will pass on Earth. And at 99% of the speed of light, for every one day which will pass on board the for every 1 hour which will pass on board the spacecraft, then 1 year will pass on Earth. So that's how it's possible to time travel by traveling into the space on board a spacecraft if you can travel at least 87% of the speed of light. But as of now, there's no spacecraft, no country which is having a technology to accelerate a spacecraft to such speed. Okay. So now it's time for the question and answer session. If anybody is having any question, any doubt, then you can let me know. So the presentation is over from my side. So anybody having any question, then you're free to ask. Akaksha ma'am, am I audible to you? Okay, so we'll be starting with the course on international space law on 2nd September, and the lectures would be held in the evening from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. It would be a 1.5 hour session every day, and the total duration of the course is 18 hours. So from 2nd September to I think 15th or 16th September, it would be over.
May I ask a question?
Yes, sir, you can ask.
Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir. May I ask a question?
Yes, is it Mr. Somdipta?
Yes, sir.
Yes, you can ask your question.
So what will be, so first of all, the topic is very interesting. This is not something which we actually are encountering on a day-to-day life. And
Right.
this is something really, really unique and different. Now, my question is, sir, regarding the course, as you had pointed out, what will happen if we do the course other than the gaining the knowledge part? Means I'm talking about from the point of view of putting it into application, say on a remote basis, or say supporting someone. How do we actually monetize our learnings?
Okay, so this course on space law, it it would be helpful mainly to the academicians, as they can increase their knowledge, and subsequently, that knowledge can be passed over to the students. And you can mention in your CV that yes, I have done a course on space law. But if you talk about monetizing it in the sense of getting a job opportunity, then in that regard, this that won't be very fruitful as such, because as I told you that there are hardly any space law firms, because there's no legal business pertaining to international space law. But yes, when we talk about aviation law, yes, you can encash upon it if you have done a course on aviation law. Then while applying to a law firm for a job, you can mention in your CV that yes, I have I have a sound knowledge of aviation law, because there are so many aviation law firms, and because of the private airlines coming up, there are many aviation disputes. Like some passengers, they have recently been grounded because of unruly behavior. So what are the legal issues pertaining to that? So, but that's another course. I'll be running it subsequently after the space law course. But so far as your question is concerned, yes, indeed, it's a good question. But then if you want to monetize upon it, or if you want a return in monetary terms on this space law course, then it won't give you monetary return as such. Yes, but certainly if you are interested in the in academics, in the teaching profession, then it would be very useful.
Thank you, sir. From the point of view of academics, I am actually enrolled in an LLM course.
Okay. Where? In which university?
So this is in Madhusudan Law University. So wherein actually they only have two streams. One is the business law and the other is the criminal law. So I have enrolled myself in the law stream. And so from that point of view, academically, it might not actually get connected with LLM, but for one's own personal benefit, it can definitely be a fruitful learning. However, what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying to compare with, that if you see, say for example, IPR. The IPR, you can work remotely also, and what do you call it? Earn and while you support clients around the world, right, sir? So I'm looking for something similar. Space law is something which is still very what shall I call, a very new subject for majority of the people. So I would like to also, even if I would say not for the sake of monetization, if I would say for the sake of further learning, how can I get connected with somebody, or if you can help me connect with somebody who can, I can do an offline internship there in order to learn further. Because this is something which I cannot go to each and every door and ask that are you doing space law? Can I help you in some way?
Okay, so as you mentioned that you want to connect with someone maybe in a foreign country with whom you can subsequently work on space law, as you gave the example of IPR. So yes, I know a few Canadian professors with whom I had interacted in the past, around 2-3 years ago. So there's the McGill University, Montreal, where there's a center for the study of air and space law, and that's actually the best place in the world if you want to do an LLM in air and space law. So I can subsequently connect you to some professors in that university if you want to do a further research on space law, okay, or in case you decide to opt for doing an LLM in international space law or aviation law, then certainly yes, we can work on that.
At least from the point of view of internship, if you can help, at least getting a hands-on experience will also help, isn't it, sir?
Yes, indeed. for internship, I can try, but I'll have to confirm from them whether, you know, they're taking interns over there or not. So in India, there's hardly any place, any firm where you can intern for space law. But yes, for aviation law, I can help, because in the Punjab and Haryana High Court also there's an aviation law firm, so I can connect you to them. But as I mentioned, कि space law की कोई firm मेरे को तो इंडिया में तो किसी का पता नहीं है. Any firm which is dealing in space law, aviation law वाली तो है. So that is the thing.
Yes, sir. Means actually, in order to take your learning forward, I can only fructify it if I take it forward and like learn something more on that. Not from the academic front, because at the end of the day, I'm not too academically inclined. Means now since academics are ending, I am going into start monetizing my learning. So that is why, even if I can do some offline internships, maybe remote also, if you can help in the space law domain, that will be great, sir. Means if even if not in India, maybe if some connection is over, then maybe it will be a great help.
Okay, so I'll try to find an online internship if it is available. So otherwise, there's a professor in NLU Hyderabad who has done an extensive research on space law and like air and space law. So I can connect you to that professor as well. So
that will be great, sir.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, welcome, Mr. Somdipta. Okay, so any other question by any participant? Any other participant? Okay, so all right then, that would be all for now. So the registrations for the course, they are still open. So you can circulate that brochure to your friends as well. So if anybody wants to register, so then you can let him know that the registrations for the space law course and the aviation law course, they are still open. So then see you on 2nd September when the course starts. Thank you.
Sir, one more point. Basically, this question of mine is really organized because your overlap with another contract drafting course which is also being conducted from tomorrow, I believe. This is basically for the organizers. My question.
Okay. So I think the organizers, they have left the meeting. They're not there right now, but I can pass on your question to them. So you're saying that this course would be overlapping with the contract drafting course.
Because tomorrow there's a contract drafting course which is starting. One for some 2 weeks, I'm not exactly sure, 10 days or 15 days. So
okay.
if it is, then it will overlap with your course. The dates will overlap with the timing of your course, the days of your course.
No, I don't think so that there would be overlapping, because even if the course on contract drafting is starting from tomorrow, then it may get over by 31st August or maybe 1st September, but certainly I'll talk about it to Akanksha ma'am, that if there is any sort of overlapping, then maybe this course can be, the space law course, it can be started a bit late, maybe 5th or maybe from 5th or the 6th of September. So I'll pass over your your concern to Akanksha ma'am. So she's an organizer, so she'll look into it.
Sure, sir. My only intent is to do justice to whatever you intend to learn.
Yes, indeed. It's better if there is no overlapping as such. So that's why I had requested ma'am, like she had requested me for taking two courses on space law and aviation law. So I had requested her that it would be better if we run the courses one after the other, not simultaneously. So she said that, okay, we will have the space law course first and then subsequently we'll have the aviation law course.
Right.
Okay. All right, all right. So, all right then. Uh, it was good to interact with all of you. So, and then we'll continue with our interaction subsequently when the course starts on 2nd September. So then see you on 2nd September or whenever the course starts, maybe 5th or 6th September. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And if you can
Thank you.
also help me with the
All right, Mr. Somdipta. I'll look into it.
so kind of.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.